Alright, so welcome to this first calligraphy live stream. I'm very happy that you're here, and we're going to have a lot of fun with calligraphy. So here I'm setting the focus manually. Right, so the focus seems to be good. Let me just check the YouTube live stream, make sure that it's going okay. Let me just check the YouTube live stream, make sure that it's going okay. Alright, the live stream is going fine on YouTube, so welcome to this live stream. I enjoy calligraphy so much I could go on for hours. Alright, let's see what else we can do in terms of calligraphy. This is a very good pen to practice with. It's a felt tip Itoya calligraphy pen, and you can see that on one end we have 3.5 millimeter, and that's very good. This tip is 3.5 millimeters. It's perfect for practice. This one is when you after you've mastered calligraphy, it's 2 millimeters, so it's very fine and it's harder to practice with, because you cannot see easily the details. So let's use the 3.5. So the most important thing is the angle. So you can see here the angle is 45 degrees. And what I mean by the angle is, let's say you have a square. And, you know, this would be 45 degrees. So what's happening with calligraphy is that, I'm just gonna stop the music, it's a little bit distracting. But what's happening with calligraphy is that you have to master one thing after another. Those are the principles before you can produce beautiful letters. So and I feel that, by the way, calligraphy teaches so much more than just calligraphy. And this is a message I want to send to all the parents, because most parents do not suspect the power that calligraphy can convey to a young person, the power of self-control, the power of self-discipline, the power of visual acuity, artistic expression, etc. But mostly it's about discipline, because let's say when you compare ordinary handwriting with calligraphy, so this is ordinary handwriting, okay? So I'm just gonna write something like this. You know, it's fine. Ordinary handwriting is legible, it's functional. Different people have different handwriting. For example, people can write detached letters like this, or they can write in a very cursive handwriting like this. So handwriting generally only has to be legible. The problem is that, and this is a fundamental insight I had, you know, handwriting is really, it's gonna shock people, but handwriting is arrested development. And hold on, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna share this live stream with members in my Facebook group. Just give me a minute, please, because I think that they should be exposed to this kind of calligraphy. Just give me a minute. It's amazing, by the way, that you can use OBS Studio and YouTube to live stream whatever you're doing, whatever you're thinking, to a worldwide audience. I just find that totally amazing. Okay, so let's get back to our programming. Where was I? Okay, so I was here. Sorry, I'm just gonna change the setting so that you can have a bigger field of view. Okay, so I was saying that handwriting is arrested development, and the reason why I say that is that no matter how beautiful your handwriting is, you're going to be stuck at a certain point, at a certain level. So it's a little bit like this, at the beginning. Okay, so this is, let's say, the beauty of your handwriting. And so over time, you know, as a kid, the beauty is very low, right? Because you're still struggling to develop and write legible letters, so it's very low. And then at one point, you're gonna begin to write beautiful letters, legible. But as with most people, it's gonna plateau at this point. And this is what I call arrested development. Arrested development in terms of the beauty, the artistry of your letters, in terms of your enjoyment of your handwriting. You no longer enjoy your handwriting because you're stuck at a certain level. So what can we do to overcome that obstacle? So what you can do is that you learn calligraphy, because calligraphy, as I'll show you in a few minutes, will introduce new principles, artistic principles. And so instead of having just ordinary handwriting, which I show here, you know, you're going to be able to develop new beauty, harmony, you know, and I guarantee you that when you write in calligraphy, you get people's attention right away. Because everyone has seen handwriting, but there are very few people in the population can do handwriting. So most people are stuck here, right? It plateaus. So children are here, and adults, most adults are here. And sometimes adults can be stuck here, because if your handwriting is not that good, you're going to be stuck here. But this is really like the best that people can do in terms of handwriting. So for example, let's say that you have very nice handwriting. So I'm just going to try to do an example. Let's say your handwriting is amazingly good, like this. So this is pretty good handwriting, right? It's beautiful, it's harmonious, etc. But even the best handwriting here, which is very unlikely because it takes time, and these days people are more likely to write like this because they need to write fast. But anyways, let's say that this is the best handwriting that you can produce, and just to make my point even clearer, let's say that this is the best. Okay, so let's say that you're really good with your handwriting, and this is the best that you can do. This is really not the best. Some people can do even better, but you can see that this is pretty good. But even this beautiful handwriting is arrested development. It's stopping here, okay? And so you want to go higher. So how do you go higher? Well, you learn calligraphy so that instead of the curve doesn't stop here, but the curve, actually it's a new curve, because this is what we call a monoline handwriting. Monoline means that there's only one thickness, and we'll see later on that with calligraphy you have two thicknesses. So this is monoline curve, and then you have to start a new curve that will basically start at 0 here, because calligraphy is very different from handwriting. So this is monoline handwriting. Monoline handwriting simply means that you're using a monoline, like a pen, like this pen, which is very different from a calligraphy pen like this, which has two thicknesses, right? Thick and thin, but this has only one thickness, a ballpoint pen. This is actually 0.5 millimeters. Okay, so you have to create a new curve, and you start from 0, and this is what I teach. This is when I teach calligraphy to children and adults. You start here from 0, okay? Because everyone who learns calligraphy starts at 0, because it's quite different from ordinary handwriting. It's quite different. So you start from 0 here, and as usual, you're going to learn calligraphy. You're going to improve, and if you have a good teacher, you're going to reach this level. So you can see that this level is higher than the most beautiful handwriting that you can achieve, which is here. Okay, so when you learn calligraphy, you're so much higher than the most beautiful handwriting. But if you learn with a master calligrapher, you can even go higher, because a lot of calligraphers, they're stuck at this level. If they are self-taught, or if they have a teacher and the teacher is at a certain level. So this is okay. So this is the first calligraphy curve. But if you continue, you're not going to plateau over here. If you continue to read books, you're actually going to go higher, and you're going to plateau over here, which is a very high level. And then you pursue your practice of calligraphy, your study, and you even go higher. And this is where the top calligraphers, I don't know, like Dennis Brown, he's one of my Facebook friends. Dennis Brown, John Stevens, definitely, he's at a very high level. This is John. I learned from John when I was in my 20s. You know, I tried to absorb everything that he writes, and today with YouTube and Facebook, you can see the work of John Stevens all over the place, and every single piece, there's so much to learn from John. He's truly a master. I also learned initially, although he's not very active these days, I think, from Julian Waters, and his mother is also a calligrapher. Forgot her name, Sheila Waters. So Julian and Sheila, they wrote a couple of books. John Stevens wrote books on calligraphy too. Dennis Brown, I'm not sure. He's more into video lessons, so he has video courses. You can check out his website at calligraphy.tv. And there's a young Vietnamese calligrapher, Dao. He's in his 30s, I believe. He went to the United States to study with calligraphy masters, and he became a master in his own right. Dao Huang. He has a YouTube channel that has about 15,000 subscribers, which is very low, because in Vietnam there's 100 million people. So I'm going to help Dao to increase his media presence. Definitely I can learn from him. I can learn from all these artists. But my point is that, you know, when you learn calligraphy, you go way beyond what ordinary handwriting can do. You're stopping here. But with calligraphy, you can go higher, and there's no stopping. You know, I've been doing calligraphy for like 30 years, and there's no limit to what I can achieve. And I think that these artists would testify that as they do calligraphy, they learn more and more. Yeah, so that's why, you know, I want to teach people calligraphy, because most people operate under the impression or the illusion or the belief that their handwriting is the best that they can produce, but it's not. It's arrested development. In other words, their intellectual, their artistic, their potential is arrested. It is stopped because they lack the knowledge about calligraphy. And one critical piece of knowledge, which I'm going to demonstrate now, is that you should use a calligraphy pen. Right away, when you use a calligraphy pen, it gives you a boost, right? So you're going to go from arrested development to a higher level. So let's do a demonstration of what I mean. So the main thing about calligraphy is that you have two lines. You have a thick line. Whoops. You have a thick line, and you have a thin line, like this. And the alternation of thick and thin lines is what produces beautiful calligraphy. So to give an example, let's say I write the letter A, and I write it like this. It's beautiful, you know, it's well structured, but it's not as beautiful as the letter A with a calligraphy pen, because you can see that the calligraphic effect comes from the alternation of thick and thin lines. So here you have a thick line, and here, over here, the diagonal, you have a thin line, and it's the alternation of thick and thin. It's almost like the yin and the yang in ancient Chinese philosophy. It's the alternation that creates the calligraphy effect. So to make it even more obvious, you have alternation like this: thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin, thick, thin. And it takes only two elements, thick and thin, to produce all kinds of calligraphic effects. So to give you an example, and by the way, when I say thick and thin, by changing the angle, see how my pen angle changes. By changing the angle, you can determine the thickness of the lines. So I'm going to use the bigger end here to show you an example. So for example, here it has a certain thickness, right? But if I change, this is 45 degrees, right? This is 45 degrees. But if I reduce the angle to 30 degrees, you can see that the thickness increases. I'm just going to put it here so you can see. So this is thicker than this. And to make it even more clear, I'm going to change to, let's say, 5 degrees. And you'll notice that it's really thick. Like this is much thicker than this. Okay. Now in contrast, if I change from 5 degrees approximately to something like 80 degrees, you can see that it's very thin, right? So you can really change the thickness. Look at my pen, how I changed the angle. Okay, so the angle now is 0 degrees. Okay, and then it goes from 5 to 10, 20, 30, and now the angle is 45, like this. And now the angle is 50, 55, 65, 75, 80. Now the angle is 90. This is 90-degree angle. And this is 0-degree angle. So when you become a master calligrapher, you can change the angle while you're executing a letter. But at the beginning, you should not change the angle. It should be fixed. The angle has to be fixed at typically 55 degrees, like this. So this is 55. And this is how you can produce a letter like the letter A here. So one of the first things to master in calligraphy is the angle. Once you set it at 55, it's like you're locking your hand. You cannot change it anymore like this. It has to be locked at 55, and this is one of the toughest things for students to master. You have to lock your angle. You cannot change. You cannot twist your pen like this or twist your pen like that, because it's going to mess up your calligraphy. Now in contrast, when you write using a monoline pen like this one, notice that I can change the angle. It doesn't matter because the thickness is always going to be the same, right? I can change the angle like this. The thickness is always going to be the same, right? But with calligraphy, you have to be careful to not change the angle once you start. All right, so I just showed you the calligraphic effect, which is caused by thick and thin line. There's something else I want to introduce, and we'll get into greater detail once we start the calligraphy course, is that fortunately, in the Latin alphabet in English and other languages that are not ideographic, like Korean or Chinese or Japanese, it's based on sound, right? So we have only 26 letters. And compare that with Chinese, for example, where elementary school children have to learn and memorize 2,000 basic Chinese characters. So they have to learn like 2,000 different ideographic symbols or characters. And in the US or in Canada or in most Western nations, we have only 26. And it gets even better because the way that I teach calligraphy is that I break down those 26 letters into families, and there's basically 5 families. And the reason why I call them families is that, within a family, oftentimes you see members of the family, they share common characteristics, their face, for example. So I break down into only 5 families, And what happens is that when you practice one letter in one family, it's like as if you're practicing the other letters in the same family. So let's take a look at these 5 families and you'll see what I mean. The first family is the A family. So what you notice here is that the body, and this is what we call the body of the letter, is very similar. And so now I'm going to write these letters again, but in bigger font so that you can really see what I mean. So you see the A is like this, and the G is like this. But you notice that the A, the body here, is very, very similar to the G. Can you see? It's very similar. So when you practice the shape of the A, it's like as if you're practicing the G at the same time, except that the G, of course, has this descender. This is what we call a descender. And so the descender is kind of simple, right? It's just a curve. You just add it. But when you practice the A, you practice the G. When you practice the G, you practice the A. So same thing with the Y. You can see the diagonal line here, right? Whoop, the diagonal line here. It doesn't have a ceiling or horizontal bar at the top, but you can see quite clearly that the shape here is the same, and then the descender for the G is like the G. For the Y is like the G. The U is the same thing. The U has the diagonal here, and so you see that. So what I mean is that when you practice one letter, it's like as if you're practicing the other letters. And when you practice, it's good. It's a good idea to practice members of the same family, because after you write the A, your hand remembers the A, right? So you have the momentum, and you just repeat the A, except that you add the descenders over here for the Q, the G, and the Y. And so another great thing about this family approach is that when you evaluate your calligraphy, it has to be consistent. So for example, if you write the A, let's say you write the A this way, you can see that it's very sharp here. It's not round. When you write it this way, then you know your G has to also be sharp like this in order to be consistent. So you cannot do an A that is sharp like this, and then when you do your G, it's going to be round like this. Can you see that this is very sharp, and can you see that this is very round? It's not consistent, and so you can see that the shape here is very different. So it has to be the same. It's either very sharp, the corner is very sharp, or the corner is very round. So within a family, you have to be consistent. All right, so let's take a look at the other families. We have 4 other families. We have the B family, like this, and the B has another family member like this, the M, the N, and the R. So you can see that the B family is different from the A, because the A family has a diagonal that is curved this way, whereas the B, it's curved the other way. So I'm going to draw it bigger so that you can see the A has a curve this way, and the B has a curve this way. So it's very different. It's actually the opposite. Can you see? This is the B, this is A. Different. So this is the B family, and the R is not as complete as the N, but if you were to continue the R, it would become an N. So that's why I put the R in the same family. Oh yeah, there are 2, there's another letter in the B family, and that's the P. Again, the curve, the diagonal curve here is the same as the B over here. Can you see? And you know that because if I eliminate the descender and I put an ascender, it becomes a B. See, so that's how we know that this is, one family, family number 2. All right, let's take a look at family number 3, which is easier than family 1 and 2. Family number 3 is just straight letters. So you have the I, you have the T, just straight. You have the K, you have the L, you have the F, and you have the J. So this is typically the easiest family, just straight letters, except for the F here, it's a little bit curved, and the J, it has a small curve, but mostly it's just straight strokes. Am I missing something? No, I think so. So the 4th family is straight lines also, but it's not going to be vertical, it's going to be diagonal. So we have the V, W, have the X, have the Y, and you have the Z. So this is in many ways maybe easier than this one. It depends on people, but I just want to point out that there are 2 ways to write the Y. The Y can be written like this, straight lines, or it can be written like the A family. Okay, so you have 2 ways to write the Y. And finally, we have probably the most difficult family, and that's the C, the O, the S, and the E. And you notice that this family, they all fit. I'm going to draw it bigger here, but they all seem to fit within some kind of oval shape like this, right? So the C, for example, is going to be like this, right? The E, you just add the hook here, right? And the S, just going to redo it. The S is going to fit within that oval shape, and the O, of course, perfectly fits in that oval shape. So because the basic geometric figure is an oval shape, which is hard to control, it's not like an eye which is straight, it's an oval shape, and therefore it's tricky. You have to practice that oval shape often, but all the letters of this family, they fit within that oval shape. Okay, whereas with the A family, they fit within a rectangular shape. So rectangle is easier to see, right? So the A would fit within a rectangle, okay, but the E, for example, would fit within an oval shape, which is more difficult to control. All right, so now that you've seen the 5 different families, let me redo the families but using a calligraphy pen. All right, so this is the A family. So like we said, the A, the D, which has an ascender here, and we have the G. Notice that the body is the same, exactly the same. And then we have the Y, which doesn't really have a body. It has an open body. So you see that it's open here at the top. It's not a closed figure. We have the U also. It has an open body here. It's open. And the Q. The Q is like the G, except that it doesn't have the horizontal bar here. So, you know, when you practice any of these letters, you're automatically practicing the other letters, and you should practice them, you know, together. And after you achieve mastery or proficiency, then you can mix it. You can practice the A, the B, the C, the O. You can mix it up. But at the beginning, I recommend just practicing one family because you have momentum, right? You know how to do the A, and then the D is the same. So to drive home my point even further, because I want my students to clearly understand, if I do an A like this, right, it's clearly an A, right? Everybody agrees. But let's say I change my mind, you know, I want to turn it into a D. Well, I just have to add the ascender, and the A becomes a D. So in a similar manner, if I do an A like this, right, but I want to turn it into a G, then I just add the descender over here and it becomes a G. Same thing with a U. If I do a U like this and I change my mind and I want it to become a Y, then I just continue and it becomes a Y. See? So this is my approach, and I haven't seen this approach being taught online or anywhere in any books, because typically, you know, they would teach students how to practice the 26 letters, but it's confusing because 26 is a lot of letters. So instead, you should just practice like five letters: the A, the B, you know, the A, the B, let's say the X or W, and then the T, and then let's say the O. And when you practice these five, you basically practice at the same time the other letters that belong to the same family. And I've tested this approach with students, and they learn very quickly because they see that, you know, the similarities. They understand the architecture of each letter. So let's move ahead, and let's say that after you take my video course and you attend my Zoom session and I give you feedback on your calligraphy and you achieve a certain level of proficiency, the next thing that you're going to be learning is how to write an entire sentence using your mastery of all the 26 letters. And typically, I forgot what it's called, but it's a sentence. It's not anagram. Is it anagram? I think so. It's a sentence that contains all the 26 letters of the alphabet. And so this is when you have achieved a certain level of proficiency. I don't recommend that you do this, but you're going to see for yourself that if you do this too early, it's not going to look too good. So you have to practice the letters before you begin to practice a word. A word like, let's say a word like fancy. And when you practice writing a word like fancy, you're going to learn how to space the letters. It's difficult to explain the spacing. It's a visual thing. You have to just practice a lot. So for example, if I write fancy like this, can you see the mistake made here? You can see that the F is too close to the A. There's not enough space here, or maybe there's too much space here, right? So as you begin to write words, not only do you have to write beautiful letters, but you have to make sure that the spacing is correct, and that can only be done through practice. And after you master calligraphy at the word level, then you can master calligraphy at the sentence level. So now I'm going to write a whole sentence which contains the 26 letters of the alphabet. So very quickly, the sentence is, what is it? Okay, it's the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So here we have the quick the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So when you get to a certain level of calligraphy proficiency, you can write a whole sentence like this, and it contains all the letters of the alphabet. You also practice the spacing within letters and the spacing within in between words, right? So I think my spacing is pretty good. And when you go to an even higher level, you learn how to play with the descender. You know, you can add like flourishes like this, and flourishes like this, but that's much later. But the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. That's a good way to practice all the letters, but you mix it up. You're not practicing each family anymore. You mix it up, and therefore that really shows whether you truly master the architecture of each letter. And also you can see here that when you write the sentence, you can compare your execution of the same letter. So if you look at my E over here, it's not quite the same as my E over here. The E over here seems elongated vertically, and this one seems shorter. So I know I've made a mistake. And also the E here doesn't look like this E over here. This E over here is kind of good, but this E here is kind of a little bit too small. Okay, so that's a mistake. And speaking of mistakes, of course, you're going to make tons of mistakes. But the important thing to remember when you practice calligraphy is that practice doesn't make perfect. Practice removes imperfections, right? So the more you practice the letters, the more you practice the sentence, you're going to remove imperfections. And you're going to get closer and closer and closer to a point where your calligraphy is almost perfect. And you get to a point where it is perfect. You know, it's almost like typography, you know, the computer fonts that you're typing with your keyboard. And when your calligraphy becomes perfect, like mechanical, then you can start to be creative. You know, it's like karate or any martial art. You have to reach a black belt, and after you reach black belt, you can be creative. Like Bruce Lee, for example, you know, obviously he's way beyond black belt, and then he can create his own style. And so you can see that, and when you create your own style afterwards, the sky's the limit. But you have to, you know, reach perfection. So how do you test yourself to see if you've reached perfection? Well, one way is to write two letters one beside the other, and you compare and you see whether they are identical. So let me give you an example of what I mean. So let's say I want to test my level in terms of the A letter. So I write the A here, and then the test is that I have to write the same A beside it. So can you see the difference between these two A's? If you look carefully, yeah, there is a difference, but you have to really look carefully. But they look pretty similar, except that you notice that the second A is a little bit smaller. I don't know if you can see. It's a little bit smaller. And of course, if you want to push it further, can you write a third letter A that is the same? So let me try. If you can do that, then you're basically a master. So you see my third letter A. This is amazing. I haven't even got my second cup of coffee, and I think it's pretty good. But again, you see the third letter A is smaller. It seems smaller than the first letter. And just to show you, you can see that the bottom here is lower than the bottom over here. Okay. And also, you know, in my defense, I don't use guidelines. So that's why, like, you know, the third A seems smaller than the first A. And also it seems, you know, I should really use Photoshop to to measure, but it seems the first letter A seems wider. This one seems more narrow. So this one seems wider. But in any case, that's how you would test yourself. And of course, if you want to even be more extreme, you try to write a fourth letter A, which I'm going to do right now. And I'm going to try to make it the same as the first letter A. So let's see. It's not bad, but you notice that, and this is a mistake, you notice that here the vertical line is straight except for the beginning and the ending, and here it's too curvy, right? It's not as straight as this one. So that's a mistake. And also you notice that here, the way that I ended, the angle here is higher than the angle here, which is lower. So this is, I don't know, probably 55, and the angle here seems to be like 45. So I didn't end it with the same angle. But you know, you're never going to achieve like perfection, like in the same way that when you type the letter A on your keyboard, the first A is going to be the same thing as the second A. But that's not the point of calligraphy. It's not to achieve perfection. It's to achieve expression. You have to express yourself. So for example, the two A's don't have to be the same. You know, if I write a letter A in a text, you know, it can be, let's say, like this, and another A, which is at the end of a word, it can be like this, right? So the two A's don't have to be the same. You know, or another A in a different place in the text can be like this, where I don't end it here, but I add some kind of flourish or something like that. You know, so the thing is that with calligraphy, of course, you have to achieve a certain level of mechanical perfection, technical perfection, but you have to go beyond technical perfection, because if you stop your calligraphy at technical perfection like this, then you're not better than any computer font. You know, computer fonts can be calligraphic, and this is the contribution of Steve Jobs. You know, he said that he attended spontaneously a calligraphy course at Reed College, and that developed his sensitivity towards fonts and letters, and that's what inspired him to create the computer fonts in the first Macintosh. And that was a major innovation because before Steve Jobs, all the computers had the same computer font. You know, it was not very creative. So in a similar manner, what I'm saying is that you know, if you don't learn calligraphy, it's like as if your handwriting was a computer font before, like from IBM. You know, your handwriting is going to be stuck at the computer font level. And so I'm just going to conclude the live stream here. I argue that handwriting is really arrested development, and the way to go beyond the level at which you're stuck is to learn calligraphy. And calligraphy is not for just calligraphers and artistic people. It's for everyone, because everyone is going to use handwriting, right? The problem, of course, is that today everyone is using a smartphone, and people have their handwriting is actually deteriorating, right? It's getting worse and worse. So most people's handwriting is not like this. You know, it's more like this, and it's kind of ugly. So I think that people who have a nice handwriting, like my three sisters, it's good, you know, and every time you look at your handwriting, you feel good about yourself. But I know people who are so embarrassed with their handwriting like this. Not only are they embarrassed to show their handwriting, but every time that they see their handwriting, they don't feel good. So think about your children. They're at school, right? Every time they see their handwriting and it's ugly, it's not beautiful, they feel bad about themselves. Whether it's conscious or not, they feel bad, and it has a negative effect on their self-esteem. You know, I see my bad handwriting, I feel bad. I feel bad about myself. You know, it's not feeling bad about the world. I feel bad about myself. And this is very dangerous for young people. But students who have a nice handwriting, who take the time to write nicely, they feel good about their handwriting. They feel good every time. Hey, I'm good. You know, I'm beautiful. I can create artistic letters. So those students, maybe like 1% or 5% of the student population, they feel good. But of course, because they have to take notes quickly in class, they have to take notes. They cannot write slowly like this. They have to take notes. So even the students who have a beautiful handwriting, when they take class notes, they have to, write quickly like this, and because they don't have time, right? And so they're forced to develop bad handwriting. So what is the solution? Well, the solution is that either, in class you can use your keyboard, you can type, or you can write like this, but you know that you can learn calligraphy the right way, and you can produce beautiful letters. So even if your ordinary handwriting, which is the case for me, is bad like this, I don't care, because I know that my true handwriting is calligraphic, and therefore I feel good about myself. I know that I know the secrets, the principles for producing beautiful letters. I know, because I can prove it. So I feel good about myself. So ultimately, I think, well, not ultimately, but one of the major benefits of calligraphy is that it increases your self-esteem, especially in children. Self-esteem is very, very important. Self-esteem is the foundation for the good life, for confidence. It is a foundation for success, because if you don't have self-esteem, you don't have much. If you don't like yourself, you don't, it's a tough place to be in. And that's why I believe that all children all over the world, in whatever country they live in, whatever language they speak or write, they should learn calligraphy, because it's so foundational. So calligraphy is not just beautiful handwriting, it is the structure of your self-discipline, the structure of your mind. If you can discipline your handwriting, and you can discipline your right hand, which is your most useful, your most skillful organ, your right hand, then you can discipline your body, you can discipline your life. But if you can't even control your right hand, and you're producing sloppy handwriting like this, you can't even control your right hand, your most useful and skillful organ. If you can't control it, what can you hope to control? Your mind, which you don't even see, or your life, which is way too big. So that's what I'm proposing to teachers and parents. You got to teach children starting from age 8, or whatever age they learn handwriting. Starting from age 8, you have to learn calligraphy. You have to learn, the principles of calligraphy, and the practice and the techniques behind calligraphy. And then you have self-esteem for life. I learned calligraphy when I was 12 in high school, and I taught myself. But that's a mistake, because for years I kept making the same mistakes. And one day I put up an ad, because I wanted to make some money with freelancing. And I put an ad at Omer Dessert, which is an art store in Montreal. And one calligrapher, who was a founder of the Montreal Society of Calligraphers, she called me, and her name was Trudy. And she said, "Peter, would you like me to give you calligraphy lessons?" And of course, even at that young age, because I was a very good student, I had an ego. So I said, "No, I don't need to learn from you." But that was a mistake. So because when you learn by yourself, you keep making the same mistake, but you don't see it. So just to give you an idea of what I mean, I didn't understand the principles of calligraphy. So I would read a lot of calligraphy books, and I would try to replicate the letters, but I didn't understand the principles, So it's like the A, I would write it like this, not understanding that the right way to write italic A is more like this. You can see that it's more structured. It's it's not like this. This looks like an A that you would write when you do handwriting like this, right? But the right way to do the A is this way. That's the right way. I mean, this has been time proven. It's been tested throughout history. This is the original A. You can't do it like this, because the right A has to have, let's say, 4.5 width. And you can see here, I did it without measuring. I did it, just with my eyesight. So here you see that it's 4.5 1, 2, 3, 4.5. So 4.5 widths. So that's the right proportion. But I didn't know that when I was reading, calligraphy books. I just tried to replicate, and I made tons of mistakes. And when you learn by yourself and you keep practicing the same but you don't see your mistakes, then the mistakes that you make become like a bad habit, and you perpetuate the same mistakes, right? But when you study with a teacher like myself, I can tell you right away what's wrong with your letters, and you can correct it right away. You don't keep making the same mistakes. That's why, like, there's a proverb in Vietnamese. It goes something like, without a teacher, I dare you to succeed. In other words, you cannot teach yourself. It's quite impossible. When you reach a certain level, then you can teach yourself. But at the beginning, you don't even know the principles, right? So you have to study under a master who teaches you the theory, but also the practice. And after you master the theory and the practice, you can become a master, or the equivalent of a black belt in karate or any martial art. So calligraphy is like a martial art. You have yellow belt, a white belt, yellow belt, a green belt, blue, brown, and then black. So my intention with my calligraphy live stream is to teach people so they reach black belt, and after they reach black belt, they can invent their own style because they master the basics already. Okay. So anyways, guys, I'm going to stop here because I need to go for my second cup of coffee. But I was happy to share with you spontaneously what I know about calligraphy and how it's different from, ordinary handwriting, which again is arrested development. So if you have kids and you don't want your kids to be stuck at a certain level of growth, personal growth, you don't want them to be, stopped here. Then I recommend that you get them into my calligraphy program for kids, or you can buy the video course, because most people have arrested development. They stopped growing in terms of their handwriting, but they don't know that there are higher levels. They don't know. They're stuck here. They have no idea that there are higher levels. And this idea of arrested development is the same in other fields, like people who are making a certain salary, let's say $60,000 or $80,000 a year. They don't know that if you go into business, you can make more than $80,000. You can make $90,000, $200,000, $300,000. They don't know. But that's why you need to have a teacher who's going to teach you how to go from your arrested development to a higher level, higher level, higher level. Because like the Vietnamese proverb says, without a teacher, you cannot succeed. All right, so I'm going to end it here. But thank you for watching this live stream, and